What's up, guys? Mike Lewis here, and welcome to the Mike Lewis podcast. If you guys want to keep up with me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lewis Official, and you can follow me on Twitter at MikeLew52. It's where most of my updates come. If you're enjoying my content, give me a like and a subscribe. And without further ado, let's just dive right into this episode. All right, Ayanna, thanks for stopping by today. How are we doing today?
Oh, it is a beautiful day in the lovely, illustrious Washington, D.C., home of Howard University and me.
Wow, you got a nice setup behind you from what I could see.
Oh, yes. This is my first podcast in a tremendous amount of time. I really wanted to put a lot of thought and effort behind making it as good as possible. So my very dear friend, Herb White with Unique Sound, while here in Washington, D.C., has allowed me to use his space in his studio. So we don't hear any sirens or helicopters. I live near a hospital, as well as, I live in a neighborhood. So you're going to hear the neighborhood sounds. I didn't want any of that stuff distracting the conversation. For any of the fans out there or anybody else that's taking the time to hear what it is we have to say.
No, I appreciate it. I'm very flattered that you went out of your way to make sure the fans and me got the best experience possible. And for those that don't know, you and I have actually been in contact for weeks now. I mean, trying to coordinate. Fans have been very excited. I probably get at least 3 DMs a day asking when Ayanna is going up, and I've kept them waiting long enough. But we're here.
I'm so flattered by all of that. Yeah, we've been working hard. Again, a lot of people have been really patient with me getting acclimated to Instagram and a lot of the other platforms. My life for the last, almost 15 years now has not been being in the public eye. So again, just thank you for your patience with me, Mike, as I jump back into this space and use the time and the opportunity to maybe help some folks.
Who was that first person that gave you a little bit of pointers on how to use Instagram stories? Can't quite pinpoint who that was.
So that's my niece. She's in Charlotte, North Carolina, making her way through the world, with her talent and her beauty and everything else. She's my niece via the father of my first 2 children. I've known her since she was 11 years old, and she's feisty and she's boisterous. She's on the platform as Ayo Strawberry. Now, mind you being, as an auntie, some of the things are a little bit more hot than the little bit more hotter tea than I'm willing to sip for myself at this stage in my life. At the same time, I think you got to support your young people in whatever it is they're trying to do, and not go into it with trying to make them be like who you are. You just need to love them for who they are. And she makes me laugh most days. She's beautiful, but yeah, she's the one that really, just between my niece, Ayo Strawberry, and my other niece with Flawlessly Made, who's also on IG, they both kind of came to me like, Auntie, you got to get your social media together. You got to at least get a toe in the water, get your feet wet. So, like most folks over a certain age, not born in the 90s, not born in the 80s, maybe born in the 70s. We have Facebook. We had MySpace pages back in the day. But to the extent that the engagement looks different with platforms such as TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram, for me, there's been a little bit of a learning curve. So they're helping me out, to say the least.
And with recent guests, we've been talking about it, kind of how now the old school people that are making their return to this like new heightened press that they didn't have back when they were originally doing their shows, like they missed that social media wave. And with recent guests, they've been in like the era of like coming up in 06, 08. Whereas your case, I mean, like, what was your last show, would you say? Was 03 maybe?
2004. Yeah, that was the last time that I was on television. Yeah, I believe that was 04. I might be a little off with the years. Everybody can fact check on the internet. Charge it to my brain, not my heart. But the last time that I was on television was around that time. And soon after that time, I began having children and working at a school. I didn't see myself in either of those spaces at that point in my life. However, again, life can hit you in ways that you don't expect. And for all intents and purposes, that journey into motherhood, into, at the time I guess you could call it an educational assistant, because I did a little bit of everything. It was I would say, the mid-range beginning of the charter school movement in our city. And so I worked at a charter school, and I did a little bit of everything, from answering the phone in the main office to running the lunch line. And I'm dealing at that time with 10 and 11-year-olds. They weren't on social media, so they didn't know Ayanna from Road Rules. They knew, me as the adult that could give them snacks, or, tell them to stop running in the hallway, or, all of the things that go into an independent school. So yeah, that really transformed my trajectory out of the film industry, out of television, out of anything attached to that space, and really went full steam ahead into family, motherhood, education, and just growing up and living life.
So would you say that life took course for you? Like, did you intend on stop doing challenges, or did it just happen?
Well, the last challenge that I was on, and again, forgive me if my memory is off, I believe I went out a little fiery. I think that was
sexist too.
Sexist too. I felt a little, I had my feelings hurt, in a couple of ways. That iconic line that everybody says, I slept in my uniform last night because I wanted to win today, was absolutely real. I did. I had so much. I went back and I watched one of those episodes. That particular episode, the last one that I was on, I watched it, and I imagined myself watching it as a mom. Like, if my mom had been, my mom, she passed away, for those that may not know. If my mom had been watching that, like, if anything, I would hope that people could really feel how intense I just felt everything. And in that moment, some people are very self-aware in those moments and they hold back. But at that age and stage in my life, I definitely wasn't. It was like, I feel it. It's right here on my sleeve. You're going to see it. And you did see it. My feelings were hurt. I think that's, if I had to say one phrase that would embody that moment, it was my feelings were hurt. As we grow up, we begin to learn that there's a difference between your feelings and your discipline. When you're disciplined, you can have those setbacks. You can have moments that, don't really put you on your pedestal. And you can recognize those moments as, okay, I need to do other work outside of this space to, be a winner the next time. However, I wasn't there yet in my life. I was, it has to be this or that. You're either riding for me and the task that has been put at hand, or you're not. And if you're not, woo, we're gonna light the keg, and it's gonna blow up, and you're gonna see all of it. And that's what that was at the time. Looking back, I had to laugh at myself one too many times, even the times that are super cringeworthy for other people, and they're like, oh my gosh, aren't you embarrassed that happened to you? But for me, I just have to laugh because that passion and the love that I had back then, I'm still, in many ways, that's a part of who I am. That's what makes me unique. That's what, in many ways, had people who are generally marginalized in the media watching, seeing themselves, saying, oh yeah, I'll pop off too. And I have feelings that are on the edge of who I am too. I was able for them to be someone that they could identify with, and find community. So, do I feel embarrassed by any of those things? Nah. It's just, it is what it is. Sometimes people I see online, I've been inundated with Instagram. So I've just been scrolling through everything from the little dances that the babies do. I've just been watching everything. And I'm like, I tell my kids, I'm like, come here, look at this. And they're like, we saw that last year, Mom. But it's all new to me. So that being said, I'm finding community. I'm finding these opportunities where people say things like, I said what I said, and that's what it is. I said what I said. I love that phrase because that embodies me really reflecting and looking back on all of it. Are there things I would have done differently? Probably, but they probably would have also been boring and nobody would have watched that stuff. It is what it is, and I did what I did. So it is, I just, in some ways, I wish I had some of that fire still. And it wouldn't be so muted, wouldn't be so quick to hide and be bold, because she is bold. Ayanna 2004, 1999, she's bold. Ayanna 2021, I tend to pick and choose my moments. And I think I could choose more moments to be bold.
Sounds like a little bit of that fire still a little there from what I could see.
Oh, we're working on it. It's like getting that phone call to come to All Stars. Once I had to make sure it wasn't a scam, but once I had Googled the person that emailed me and all of this stuff, I was very intentional, and am currently being more intentional about pulling out the bold part of who I am. I don't know if we'll get into it that deep on this podcast, but, leading up to the challenge, I'd gone through some challenges in my personal life and in our familial life. That word challenge, I could literally just tattoo it on my forehead because that's what life has been like for us, even pre-pandemic. There are spaces where I've had to sit and realize that I was at rock bottom with my finances, rock bottom with my self-esteem and self-image, just really trying to come out of a very difficult time. When we're in those spaces, we tend to put these armors on that mute who we are and mute our boldness and mute our voice. But I'm not trying to be muted anymore. When I walked onto the tarmac and got on the plane, I left Mama Yana. I left all of that. I left a lot of who I sheltered myself to be. I left that there and told myself, I am going after everything that I can go after with this opportunity. This may be my do-over. This may be my second chance. So I just look forward to seeing, having you guys watch what unfolds. Some of it's clean and juicy and tastes good, and some of it is gonna be smarting, and some of it might, it might rattle your senses, but it's gonna be good. And I think that you guys have a fun ride ahead of you if you choose to come on the challenge bus and ride with us.
Since you just brought it up, though, with obviously, challenges in your familiar life, are you comfortable sharing? Was there an event that took place that you're referring to?
Oh, absolutely. Again, for those of us that are watching that last remember me from Road Rules Semester at Sea, during that amazing trip, amazing trip, I also wrestled with my mom finding out that she had a recurrence of breast cancer. I believe we got back in May of 99. My mom passed away by March of 2000, the following year. What I didn't know at that same time was that the executive producer for Bunim Murray, Mary Ellis Bunim, was also fighting cancer. She also eventually transitioned. My mom's transition for me was something that became, for some people, the transition of their ancestors and their elders in their lives are become a baseline for then their next transformation into manhood or womanhood. But for me, because of how it happened, and it was so sudden and I was so young, it was something that became a void and a hole for me. how do we fill holes and how do we fill voids? Sometimes we invite opportunities and people into our lives to replace what we think is missing. But unless you do the real work of resetting and resurrecting and reclaiming yourself, sometimes what you fill those spaces with and how you fill those spaces with are just unhealthy. I know it may sound like I'm dancing around it, but I want to be very respectful of those of you who are watching this and your time. Again, I could go down a laundry list of the details, the unsundry details of the walk. It did have to do with, my familial circumstances. Sometimes when you fall in love with a person, your love is pushed to spaces where you're reminded that this is where you have to take an inventory of, how you love. Sometimes love means you have to create space and step away, especially when your partner may be dealing with circumstances that are a little bit more than just what, couples therapy can unpack. Sometimes love means letting go. And for me, it took a long time for me to let go, for me to take that inventory, if you will. And then we roll into the pandemic during that inventory. One thing that I can be very explicit with is, as a part of that journey, I hit rock bottom. Financially, I ran out of funds to support that work, because sometimes as mothers and women and caregivers and people that are joined at the hip with somebody who's in recovery from whatever their addiction happens to be or their mental illness happens to be, that's not cheap. There's bail bonds that are paid. There's attorneys that are paid. There's time taken off of work. There's all of these incidents that, add up over time, and you find yourself spent emotionally and financially. And a lot of times folks don't talk about what that looks like when you really stand by somebody who's going through something that's intense and a roller coaster ride up and down. When I decided to walk away from my circumstance, again, like I said, I was financially done. I was financially spent. I was emotionally spent. I was 5 months pregnant with our second child. Like I said, I have 4 children. So this is recent. This happened again within the last 3 years. I didn't know where to go or what to do. And it took a very, very good friend of mine saying, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be by yourself. There is a space where you can come and you can talk to somebody who's not someone who knows you, who's not someone who's going to put you in a box and ask you all of these whys. They're going to ask you how. How can we get through this together? How can we get out of this hole? And so that's what I did. I trusted. I partnered with an agency here in DC called Lift DC. And I walked in the door and we set 3 goals. This was a little over 2 years ago now. And we hit the goals with the coach. At that time, like I said, I was 5 months pregnant with my last child. And I had a 1.5-year-old. I was holding her hand. And I walked into their offices and just laid it all out on the table. This is messy Ayanna. This is ugly Ayanna. This is undone Ayanna. And I don't want to be this person. And I need help. And that's what I did. And they have coaches there who are trained in this work. And we did the work. We just really dug deep and did the work. Through that partnership, I was able to partner also with the Mary Center here in Washington, D.C. And, to jump to present day, I look back on, there was a recent city council hearing because every year in DC, our city council has to approve the annual budget, and they hear from all the agencies and programs that are impacted by those expenditures. Well, I had an opportunity to tell my story. Again, I haven't been in the public eye for a while. So, to be able to advocate on the behalf of people who many times either mute their own voices because they're embarrassed or whatever their reasons are, or in this, again, digital age, this fear of your vulnerability being kind of etched into stone online. I was able to overcome that fear and be a voice for those who may not be able to express their walk. And, between getting a call for this challenge and being right here, right now on the Mike Lewis podcast, it's just, again, a testimony to when sometimes you lose yourself and you become undone. Universe, God, whatever you want to call it, has a way of saying, okay, just keep on going, one step at a time, one walk at a time, one jump at a time, because your purpose is coming. Your reason for being here is coming. Just take a breath and take a moment to step outside of the clouds, outside of the fog of your circumstance, to breathe. And, in a nutshell, that's been the last, 3.5 years, like the rest of the nation and the world. We're in the midst of a pandemic. I had a baby 10 days before our city went into quarantine. So we went from everybody being in activities and out in their school settings to all being together for a long time, doing school together, doing 3 meals a day together, doing our showers and chores. And really, I think as a gift of that experience, really getting to know one another once again as teenagers, and my older two are in middle and high school. And so them being at this stage and being intense with them, again, we get back to this idea of challenge. Why shy away from it? Because at the end of that, you are stronger. At the end of that, you're more resilient. At the end of that, you have new information. You have a new outlook on life. Our family was diagnosed with COVID last December. Fought through that. I've had my grandmother. She died last year, COVID-19. So, when we talk about this idea of a pandemic and the realities of it, it's hit my family and my life in multiple ways. However, the pandemic has also been one of the greatest blessings for us during our time, because, again, one thing about going through rebuilding yourself and bringing yourself back to you, you get put to the test. All right. You think you're put back together. You think the tape is nice and sticky, and you think you've shorn up the building with the strongest bricks and the strongest mortar. Let's put you to the test and let's see how strong your foundation is. So, this pandemic has definitely provided many opportunities, to shake the house, to see if it would blow down with the wind. But as you can see, I'm still here. I'm here. Like, Color Purple, there was a line where Whoopi Goldberg's character Celie says, "But I'm here. I'm here." So, that's the best way I can really tell that story. Not only being fair to, the father of my two kids and, not putting all of his stuff too far out there in the street. But also just being fair to the fact that, we went through some things over the course of the last couple of years that really have driven this whole idea of embracing and taking on and being fearless for a challenge situation. So, I went in full steam ahead. Did I do everything right? Absolutely not, Mike Lewis, because when you really go YOLO, you go YOLO in certain ways where you'd be like, maybe you shouldn't have gone that far over the YOLO line. But look, I went over the YOLO line a couple of times, and I'm okay with it. I did it. I did it. How you say? I said what I said. I did what I did, and that's what it's.
Thank you for being so open with your stories and your situations. They were definitely inspiring and touching. It seems like the word challenge isn't a figure of speech to you in your way of living. It's almost like a mantra in a way, right? Like challenge is something that you live by, embracing challenges. So that way, when you're going on the challenge, the show, it almost seems like nothing. It pales in comparison to what you've already had to face in your life. Would you say that you have a chip on your shoulder heading into the show?
I would not say necessarily a chip on my shoulder, because what does that imply? A chipped shoulder. I have a family member that had like a chip in their bone, and it was very, very painful all the time. It caused them not to be able to move. Chip on our shoulder, those euphemisms, right? Let's just get to the point. Did I come in with an agenda? Absolutely. Did I come in fearless? Absolutely. That's definitely what I came to the challenge with. I came in fearless with my look. I tried every hairstyle in the book the week before I left. And I think when you watch the show, you might see a little bit of some of that work. Did it come out great every single time? You be the judge. I don't know. All I know is that I was trying in my own way to be fearless. So you're absolutely right. This whole word, challenge, again, getting back to just this whole idea of the challenge. I did not realize that there had been 37 seasons. Like I literally was in around 2004, 2005. I kind of went under, I won't say went under a rock per se, but again, I've not had a cable bill since around 2004. So, I didn't watch television that much. And once Netflix came out and the internet kind of blew up with streaming, I really found myself fascinated with channels like YouTube and streaming services because, I may not be the best at social media, but in other technology spaces, those have been fascinating to me. And so I really jumped all the way in when it came to the Netflixes and all of these spaces where on demand, I could just click and watch whenever I wanted to watch. 1:00 in the morning, 2:00 in the afternoon, pause it. All of these, oh gosh, for me, that was the end all be all. I think I was one of the first subscribers to Netflix and Tidal. I don't know if that's, and somebody might fact check and say, no, you weren't. There were already 30,000 people before you. But I remember when these services first came out, I jumped right on them. I was like, whoa, this is great. I could watch everything when I want to watch it. And, in my bedroom and in my drawers if I want to. So that being said, the whole like challenge franchise, I think two things happen. You get really distracted with your life. And, again, I at this point, I now have 4 kids, but back then I had 2. I was in graduate school. I was teaching full time because I eventually went on from being just a generalized person working at the school to going to grad school and actually getting credentials enough to begin being able to teach. And so, your life becomes encompassed with whatever it is you're busy with at the time. And I also think that when I put the idea of me being on television and me being this action star doing all of these amazing things, I think that some of that was tied into not watching at that time, because my body did begin to change. Like a lot of people, I struggled with, being a Division I athlete for a huge chunk of my life, being always physically fit, someone able to jump and move and be agile at the drop of a hat, to not being that at all. Dealing with gestational diabetes, dealing with weight gain after having children. Those things, I think, for me, became the lock on my box when I decided to close the box and the idea of me being an action star, of me being somebody that someone would want to watch jumping into or out of anything. So again, getting this phone call was kind of like opening Pandora's box for me. It's like literally, like the box creaked. I gotta wipe away the cobwebs, and you know, and as I'm opening these boxes and I'm beginning to watch these shows to get reacclimated to just the whole world, I did find myself stopping in certain moments because the anxiety starts to, fall in. Oh gosh, why are you watching this? Are you going to be able to run fast enough? Are you going to be able to jump high enough? It's television's in HD now, so they're gonna see everything versus VHS and beta back then, where you could kind of get away with some stuff because aesthetically, because it just wasn't that clear. So people start talking in your ear. I had one family member. Are you serious, girl? Do you know how big you are now? Like that's exactly what my family member said, and God bless that family member. That those things did weigh with me because it wasn't necessarily about like being a bigger person. It was, can you do these things while having weight on you? Can you win? Can you be a winner? Physically, aesthetically, not having a certain look and a certain presentation about yourself. So yeah, you talk about climbing over beliefs and mindsets. That's what it was for me. That's what it is. So I did watch some of Challenge All Stars season 1. I did. It was part of the reason why I said yes to season 2. My biggest anxiety, to be very candid with you, Mike Lewis, reality has changed in 16, 17 years, with all of the different iterations of reality shows and what the public expects reality to be, that paired with with the internet and folks really being able to pull up all the receipts and create a little Twitter about it and say, look, this thing the person said, she said that the sky was blue on that day, it was purple, and she's a liar and a tramp and all these things. Like, that was just overwhelming to me. But what helped me get over that hurdle was watching season 1, seeing how the production company really treated the project. I think that it was fair to people, even when they had their moments. I believe there was a moment where Trishelle just really came out of, who she is with a statement that wasn't well thought out at the time. And there's this moment where, for me, as a former cast member, I'm like, oh God, is this the black girls gonna go crazy moment? Is this the white girls being racist moment? Like, what is this gonna be? And for me, that's kind of triggering because it really takes your most vulnerable moment and it just puts it out there like, a potato chip when you're hungry. People are going to eat it up. It's going to be ravenous, but will it really have nutritional value? That can be debated. But when I saw how, that moment was handled in terms of the production and how they cut things together to tell that story, it reminded me a lot of, if you go on my Instagram, you'll see a picture of her. There was I don't know what the title, if the title is director or associate producer. I don't know what her title was at the time. But she was one of the people on production that was, on the show with us. And without going into the rabbit hole of TV magic, because we don't want to do that, as a person and an individual, I remember one of my very first interviews with her. We had talked and she said, I'm a storyteller. I want to tell a story. I want to tell a real story that people can connect with. And one thing that I loved about her is that, I don't mind now showing my kids Road Rules Semester at Sea now 20 years later. When I wasn't even thinking about having kids, the work that she did and her team did at that time, or the people that were with her, they produced a work and a product that, my kids can watch, my grandkids can watch. And I'm not going to be embarrassed for not a minute of it, because all of it, for better or for worse, it is what it is. I felt that that energy when I watched All Star season 1. You know, yes, people are going to argue. Yes, people are going to become undone and unhinged and maybe cuss each other out or whatever else. Yes, folks are going to be a little bit extra with, you know, who they sleep with and how they sleep with folks. At the same time, I didn't feel mentally fatigued after watching All Star season 1. I didn't feel like I needed an aspirin after watching people, you know, go high octave with the arguments for, you know, 45 minutes. That didn't happen. So it was part of my reason for saying yes. Just really feeling the nostalgia of it. I felt like people could watch it and maybe take a break from all of the drama that may be happening in their lives or the struggle of just being in the midst of, you know, a worldwide pandemic. It was a feel good type of thing. So I appreciate those. I appreciate those creative works that can do that for human beings at this day and time, because it's so much. It's one of the reasons why I stepped away from Facebook a few years back, because on my feed, every 5 minutes you were, you know, hearing, you know, our 45th president did this and our 45th president did that. And, you know, this person was assaulted by the police and this person didn't get justice. And it was constant barrage of all of these very serious issues that shouldn't be ignored in any way. But we all need a break. Everybody needs a moment to just be able to say, wait a minute, this isn't all of what life is. And I don't think that you need to be rich to have a break. I don't think that only the wealthy can have these moments of living and breathing and experiencing our world and its natural beauty and having a little bit of an adrenaline rush, not because you're running from a police officer, but because you might be running to, I don't know, melt a big block of ice with your butt. I don't know. But I think that we all deserve a freaking break, and you don't need to, you know, you don't need to be rich to do it and have one and experience the world. So I hope that answers your question.
I would say it does. So what I like to do with all my guests, and this is especially going to be true in your case since, you know, we haven't heard from you in quite some time. I like to ask them their casting story or process and how they first auditioned and what the process was like with getting onto their original show. Could you walk me through kind of, from what you could recall, the full story of how you got casted to be on Road Rules Semester at Sea?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go. Mike Lewis. Let's take you on a journey. Let's take you back in time to fall of 1998 on the campus of the illustrious, founded in 1867 or 5. One of those 2 years, but Howard University. That's where I was at. 1867. Howard University was founded. Right after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, by the way. So at any rate, so you have Howard University, Washington, D.C., 1998. And I mean, you talk about the Yard being iconic. For anybody that's ever either attended Howard University, Googled Howard University, you're going to see one of two things. You're either going to see Founders Library or you're going to see some sort of iteration of the Yard. The Yard was our meeting place. It was our homepage for a lot of you young people that, you know, our internet, really, that's where you go. It's your landing spot. It's where you land. It's where you sit and where you grow. So that's how the Yard was for us. We didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones even. So if you wanted to see your friends, if you wanted to see other people, if you wanted to like somebody, you had to go outside and dap them up or, you know, say hello and have these analog interactions. And that's what the Yard was for us. Well, on one particular day, the casting company, Dean Murray, had a casting call hosted on Howard University's campus in Blackburn. But again, the line was basically almost a perimeter of the Yard. Well, at the time, I was at Howard on an academic scholarship and a partial track scholarship. And I also literally walked onto Howard's campus with my scholarship, and that was about it. My mom and I think I like to own it as I was being an 18-year-old person, smelling myself. But right when I graduated from high school, my mom and I kind of fell out for a little season. And she was like, well, look, if you want to help yourself to your cup of disrespect, you can go ahead and drink it. But you're not going to drink it. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to send you any money. So, we wound up making up soon after that. But this whole idea that I'm out here and I need to make it on my own, that was very present for me in terms of just having extra money. So I was always looking for ways to make a little side hustle, a little side cash. I used to do hair. I would clean people's rooms, even though my room was a hot mess. Shout out to the one roommate that I ever had at Howard. I'm sorry, girl. I'm just going to say it right now on the Mike Lewis podcast. I was a hot mess. I'm so sorry. And that's what I got for you. Anyway, so yeah, I would clean people's rooms. I would do hair. I used to actually, well, I'm not going to share that right now. Maybe that's on Ayanna part 2 of the Mike Lewis podcast. But there's a lot of things that I would get into to have a little side hustle. Well, at the time, I owned a Polaroid camera, and another girlfriend of mine had a Polaroid camera. For those of y'all that don't know, you get the film from the grocery store or the pharmacy, and you push it in the machine, and you push the button, and it comes out, and you gotta flick it to get cold, and then you have a picture, right? Well, the casting company required, well, they didn't really require, but if you really wanted to get seen, you wanted to get into the small pile versus the big pile of papers, you needed to have a picture of yourself. So you have all these people standing in line. They got pictures of themselves at the grandmother's Easter celebration. They have their prom pictures with the boyfriend cut off. Like, this is back in the day. So you don't have any digital ways of sharing photos. So people had what they had. So what my friend and I decided what we were going to do was buy a boat ton of Polaroid film and take real time, because everybody was, made up in their, pre-con gel finest. Yes, pre-con gel. You can Google it for those of y'all that might not know what that is, but everybody was, gelled up and shea buttered up, twisted up and whatever their best was. So we were like, look, pay us, and at that time, $5 for a picture. Oh gosh, you may as well, that was a lot of money. That was a lot of money, but people saw it as their opportunity to be their best selves. So we were charging people anywhere from like $3 to $5 to take a picture that was of them on that day, not of them, at the club with their friend from 2 years ago, with the old hairstyle, to attach to their application for the real world. They were casting real world and road rules. But at the time, really, unless you were kind of into adventure shows, the real world was the one that everybody really, really knew about. Road rules was kind of like, you had a niche fan base, I think, at that time. And I was a part of it. I watched Road Rules. So that's what it was. I think they were there for like a day or two, but I had on a pair of roller skates. I think she had on a roller skate or two, but I don't remember now. But I know I had on roller skates. But we were roller skating up and down the thing, taking pictures of people, getting our money. I think I made like at least a little over $100 at the time, which for me, that's a lot of money. Because some people, you know how it goes when you selling something and you see your friends. Come on, let me get my free picture. Come on, Mom, let me get my free picture. So, a couple of, cuties got a free one. They got a little free picture, it didn't take much for me back in the day. Just throw me that good smile or promise me a piece of cocoa bread and a Jamaican beef patty from because back then I wasn't quite on my vegetarian kick. And I'm still not, but for another season, like a huge chunk of my life, I was vegetarian. But back then on that day, nah, you give me a little beef patty from the stand in front of the School of Business. Oh, we got the barter system going. So, a couple of pictures got bartered, but after like paying for the film and everything, I made like $100 or something dumb. One of the people from Buena Murray was like, you can't do this. We need your whatever photos you still have on you. We need your camera. We need your money. please. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I went off on them. I was like, you're not getting nothing from me. I go here. This is my school. Y'all come in here trying to find y'all little loud black person for your show. Look, I'm going to get mine. You got yours. I'm going to get mine. And so it was funny how it panned out, because the guy was like, come here, sit down. He had me sit down at a table. He was like, fill this out. I was like, I'm not filling nothing out for your lawyers to come try and track me down. Matter of fact, I got my own lawyers. Mind you, I ain't have no lawyer. I didn't have nothing close to one. I was like, I get my own people track me down. He's like, fill this out. And it was an application for the show. In my mind, I'm like, okay, because mind you, I was kind of into conspiracy theories back then too, because, you know, we had a couple of kind of offshoot groups on campus that would come. They weren't affiliated with the university, but they would come to recruit, you know, unsuspecting people that maybe didn't have a lot of information and knowledge. And I mean, back then I didn't have a whole lot of information and knowledge in those spaces either. But they would come to recruit or whatever. So I had a little bit of conspiracy, you know, theory stuff happening in my head. I'm like, you trying to get my identity, my information, so you can come sue me later and take my $100-something or whatever. Don't try to rationalize it, because I was not very rational person with it. But at any rate, they gave me the application to fill out. I wrote my information on there. I wrote a bunch of crazy answers, like really. Some of the answers I think were real, but most of them were kind of not necessarily like exaggerations or embellishments, but it wasn't what you would write if you really want to move forward with anything. It was just what it is. So I'm like, okay, I had my moment. They had their moment. I really wrote it off as this institution that wants to try to like steal my shine. They're not really going to be worried about me. They're going to go back to Hollywood or wherever they come from, and they're going to pick their people. And that's what's going to be what it's going to be. They're not going to come after me for my headshot money. The next day I get a phone call and they're like, we need you to meet us at this location, this hotel, and we need you to be here tomorrow at this time, or there will be some consequences or whatever. So I was like, you know what? Y'all want to try and get my bread? Fine. I'm going to get my lawyer. So I had this friend. She was in the School of Business, and they used to have to wear suits twice a week. So I said, put on your School of B suit, girl. We got to go down here, and you're going to be my lawyer. She's like, all right, bet. I'm going to be a lawyer. Because, you know, Howard University, you know, we do what we do, right? I was like, look, you pre-law, you're going to be my lawyer. She's like, all right, bet. I'm going to be a lawyer. So we went down to the hotel. And we went there, and the guy was like, come with us. And so she's like, it's cool. If you need me, you know what I mean? Come let me know. So I was like, okay, I'm going to call you. I'm going to call your name. If you give me call your name, you come in here, you know, because, you know, she's my lawyer. I walk into the room. They got a camera set up. They got the lights set up. He's like, sit down. Who are you? And that was the beginning of it. He was like, look, we want to find out more about you. We can't say that we're going to cast you on the show, but you was fighting real hard for your headshot money. Like, who are you? And I just began to tell him a little bit about my story and who I am. And a few months later, I literally was in my dorm room with one of the guys from the track team. And I got the phone call saying that I got it. And you know, that phone call changed the trajectory of a lot of my movements coming forward. You know, and that was my casting story. Like, it literally was, you know, me being my authentic self at the time, and you know, really falling into an opportunity to go around the world. and that's what that was, with an amazing group of people. And when I say amazing, I'm talking about every single person. Okay. The internet will create internet beefs for you. And, you know, I'm going on the record to say, you know, I don't have no beef with anybody from my cast. Nobody. You know, despite what some people may say or think, every last person that was on my cast in their own ways are not only dynamic individuals, but they have a unique story. You know, and I look forward to y'all learning a little bit more about all of us, for those of us who choose to share.
Well, I could definitely see why they casted you. That was not your run-of-the-mill casting story, if I had to say so. Never heard someone bringing their friend dressed in a suit as their lawyer to
Oh
meet up
yeah,
with.
yeah. She was looking bad too. She was looking sharp. Because you get your one School of B suit or your two. I mean, like I said, for anybody from Howard University watching, they understand what I'm talking about. Really, with the girls, with a couple of safety pins, you can make a too small suit or a too big suit look smoking, right? And of course, the Howard University curves. Some of our curves come in size extra large, and some of our curves come in size extra small. But we all got a little bit of shum. They don't lie about Howard girls. They don't lie about us. They don't lie. They don't lie. The guys, on the other hand, some of our guys definitely, some of them showed up in Uncle's brown Easter suit, and they're like, nah, I gotta be blue or black. And they had a couple of weeks to get with the program. But like I said, these are the stories when you talk about Howard or any university or college or transition space that you go through when you're 18. They shape you, they mold you. You're able to look back on them and say, all right, these are the lessons that I learned from that. But yeah, we really how they say, we finagled, or we pushed the envelope on that lawyer business. So yeah, I'm on the record. She had never taken the bar, man. She wasn't a lawyer, she was she was my teammate. She was my road dog. So my ride or die, as people will say. She was a ride or die for me. So, just bringing everything full circle, that's my casting story, to this day. My casting story cannot be separated from me being in college, from me being at that time in my life being at Howard University. My Howard University network. Again, you talk about a challenge. How do you get over challenges? You get over challenges with your tools, with your team, with the people who believe in you when maybe you can't see yourself. And so, Brandy Forte, I'm gonna just say her name right now on the podcast. She has been one of my ride or dies ever since those days. She's a writer. She has several books. Definitely check her out. Brandi Forte. She has been one of the people that have helped me begin this process of coming out of my armor. Because again, I had to put on an armor during these last 4 or 5 years. Sometimes things got through the armor and you had to nurse those wounds. But again, between, Brandy Forte and the team with Switch On Nation, that's theviplife.net. Again, we're transforming. We're transforming first what's on the inside, and then sometimes what's on the outside gets a little bit of a touch up as well. Again, you might not see me under the knife. No shade for nobody that has to do that or wants to do that. But I might put a little bit of war paint on, might put a little lipstick. I might get my hair did every now and again. That might happen at the post at the season of my life. To represent those of us from the 70s and the 80s babies and whatnot. So yeah, it's again, that Howard connection is real. That these all-star challenges, just to really extend it to the fans for real. You think about those times in your life where you really got to pull yourself up. How many times is someone in that journey or that circle someone who's known you forever? Reach out to that person, tell them you love them today. If you're watching this, pause the podcast, call your cousin or whoever else showed up to bail you out or whatever it was. Call them, tell them, you think about them, and then you come right back to the podcast. Watch the rest of whatever it is we come up with. Mike Lewis.
Oh, we're still cooking, so. So your Road Rules season wasn't a traditional one because you guys were you're on a boat, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So was that something that you were happy about, or would you have liked to be on an RV?
Listen, being on a ship, and that was something that was corrected for me on the very first day by the captain of the ship. So, I was like, oh, wow, look at this big boat. And he's like, it's not a boat. He's like, it is a ship. It is a ship. And I think he even told me like the type of ship, and he got a little bit more technical, but he was serious and for real. It was as if I was talking to a Marine about how to say Semper Fi or whatever it is, whatever it is their rituals and routines are. Like, you don't mess this up. You say ship. And so, we're on a ship. Even right now, as I'm on your podcast, I'll show it to you, Mike. This,
wow.
That's my little semester at sea bracelet. Again, I can't tell you what being in an RV with 5 other people was like, because I didn't do that. I am so glad. Like, I can't imagine us being in an RV, if that makes any sense. Let me go back. Let me do a if woulda, coulda, shoulda. Surprisingly, I think if we had been in an RV, some arguments may have happened sooner. But I think that because of that proximity in space, you're kind of compelled to get over it a little bit. When many times you have conflicts with other people, space can be your enemy sometimes. We're on a ship with, 800 other students. So our group, what kind of sets us apart from, the road rules tradition is that we did have other people to interact with. There were, as you could definitely see on the show, there were other relationships, and there were other connections, and there were sub stories to our story as a group. Do I feel like that in certain ways impacted our ability to come together as, a group of folk? I do, because when you can retreat to your other friendship circles and hit your reset button constantly, then you really don't give yourself the chance to, check yourself on your assumptions or challenge yourself to overcome, whatever lines you've drawn about that person. So yeah, that's I wouldn't go back and do it differently. I learned way more about what I didn't know during that opportunity, going to all of the places around the world, seeing that as a brown-skinned girl. And, again, the internet will have you thinking that because I'm not a certain shade of a paper bag that I don't qualify. But no, I've always been a brown-skinned girl. I qualify myself as a brown-skinned girl. And, y'all be mad if y'all want to. Internets. To go to Brazil, to go to South Africa, to go to Kenya, to go to Mombasa, to go to Madras, India, to go to Malaysia, to go to these places where there are so many brown folk of different hues and stations and walks and stories. I had not experienced that in that way. I moved around a lot as a kid. I went to about 10 different schools before I hit middle school. I lived in several different spaces and cities because of the circumstances of our life at the time. So that sense of place, I never really had that. However, I got really aware that there were different types of people that, were white folks. You got white folks who have this experience, and you have folks who don't consider themselves white, but may appear to be such, and I've lived in intimate, I've gone to school in intimate settings, with folks that have different stories and different dimensions to who they are. Right. But doing that while being in their homelands, is a different thing. I look back and I didn't realize how much I didn't know about the world until you go out there and you're like, wow, you didn't think you were a tourist, but you are a tourist. You're a tourist to, understanding that maybe what you consider to be poverty would be considered to be living in a space of wealth somewhere else. I met kids that have been working since they was 3 years old. I had a 3-year-old try to sell me some bracelets in one country. And, these ideas that the struggle of others can be quantified or qualified based on your understandings. That was shattered. That was absolutely shattered through that experience. So I won't take that back for anything. I do think, though, the most intense moments that I've had with many of my cast members from that show didn't happen on camera. They happened off camera. The technology was different back then. So, if we had been in an RV in this day and time where, you could put a hidden camera anywhere, it's not as apparent or intrusive as a huge, beta cam on somebody's shoulder. Do I think it would have been different? Absolutely. But what in life wouldn't be different? We've all had different walks. I think that my most relate, though, if I had to say to my cast members, whose walk I relate to, I think I relate to Yes's walk, Pua's walk, and Sean's walk, just because they got a bunch of kids. And, if you talk about let's get to know Ayanna and who she is, oh my goodness, you can't talk about me without talking about having a ton of kids and what that does to you, what that does to your sleep patterns, what that does to just your sensibility about what you share in life. So yeah, if somebody were to invite me back to say, okay, we're gonna take you back into that space with the same people to experience life, would I say no to that? Absolutely not. Like, who would? Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Some people can't even travel out of state, and I'm going to turn down traveling in a space like that? Absolutely not. Do I think it would be absolutely different? Of course, because again, many of us have had major transitions in our lives. I love my cast members, every last one of them. And when I say what I say, I say what I said. We all got that cousin we don't mess with. I was about to use the F-bomb, but I'm gonna leave that off. But we all got that one cousin who you love that cousin, but you don't really mess with them. You don't call them up, you don't text them. But if they showed up at your door and they needed something, you would give it to them. Full stop. Full stop. And that's just how I feel. That's me.
So I want to ask you for a moment, since you obviously pointed out about your color. I think like on one of those shows, it might have been that show, I think you did make a comment of you don't want to come across like the angry black girl, I think it might have been. Mm-hmm. So that shows to me like you were ahead of your time a little bit with being able to analyze that. How do you feel like you were portrayed on these shows? Were you okay with how you were portrayed, or were there some things that maybe you would nitpick at?
I'll tell you this. There are times where I wish I'd have put like I told you earlier, I was going to put this pen in my mouth so I could enunciate. There are times where I wish I had have enunciated just for the good of the order. And one of those times was when I was talking about when I met LL Cool J. I saw that meme, or somebody had done a little short meme and sent it to me, and I just cracked up when I saw it. So again, I do believe in true love and that there are soulmates, yada, yada. I believe in all that too. But I also believe that you could just have a crush. You could just have somebody that you dig. And LL Cool J was one of those people. And even still to this day, even, NCIS LL Cool J, he could still, I will still fangirl out a little bit in the room. I may not scream and then touch his, muscle and run out the door. I might not do that. But back then, I'm gonna touch a muscle, I'm gonna run, and I'm just gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna wash my finger for the next 20 years. Let me tell you, any fan that's ever been like that super fan, screaming, crying, you watch the old Michael Jackson shows, and there were these people and they were just crying oh, it's Michael Jackson. I was like that for LL Cool J, So when I had the opportunity I think that was the very first challenge I'd ever been on, the Extreme Challenge, to meet LL Cool J, I think, like I said, if I could go back, I would have enunciated, because I believe even in the interview about it, I was just all over the place. I just said, oh my God, LL Cool J! I don't think anybody heard anything other than, that. And that, I think that's just me nitpicking. As your awareness grows about how important it is to capture language and to communicate, that's just something that sticks out for me right now. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
So we were joking a little bit before. You said about there's that one cousin that you're like, yeah, you don't really mess with, and a lot of the followers wanted me to ask you about this. They wanted to know what was the whole situation between you and Veronica with your paper that got stolen. Could you maybe walk me through that? Did you really steal the paper? What was the whole rundown on what really transpired?
All I'm gonna tell you is this. It's interesting. So when I opened up the box, like there's this box. If you go on my Instagram, you'll see that I opened this box. I mean, anybody that knows me that has known my walk being here in DC, for the folks that really know me, they know about, my basement that used to flood out and everything. And, when I opened this box, I wondered to myself if when I went through it, back then you used to have your documents stored on a small flip drive, not flip drive, but what do you call it? Like a 3.5 by 11 disc, one of the little hard discs. And I wondered if I had a copy of the actual paper. I was like, I wonder if I actually have that paper, like if I could find that paper, just for giggles and kicks, because it's something that comes up in the online conversation a lot. I would be interested to just see it, for my own giggles and kicks. But in terms of, okay, what's the real deal? Did she do it or did she not do it? That's for her to answer, and it's for TV magic. One thing that I like about how Buna Murray told that story, if you watch very closely, if you watch the video, if you watch the clips, even the really, really short clips, like, the coffee cup in the corner, kind of like if you go back, there's this movie, The Usual Suspects, with Kevin Spacey, and he plays his character, Kaiser Sose. And, but and you don't know that he's Kaiser Sose till the very, very end. Sorry if I ruined it for any of you. But there are a series and sequence of events that if you watch the movie very closely, he tells you he's Kaiser Sose from the very beginning. That being said, if you want to know the answer to that question, you can watch the show. You can look very closely. You can look for the clues and see what you come up with. But, the few times that I've been asked off camera about it, just from people in passing, I try to respect whoever she is and whatever she's into now as a woman, as a grown adult. I don't know if she's a caregiver for, others or whatever else. People evolve past their worst moments. People, transform into other things. So I know how I feel being asked about some of my most vulnerable moments over and over and over and over again, like it's Groundhog Day. I will never know how it feels to be her and be asked that question over and over and over again. So in terms of, how I can feed into that or not feed into it, I just choose to leave it where it was. A story was told, something happened, I like to live my life with, I did what I did. And, for better or for worse, it's what I did. Love it or leave it. But whatever it is over with. If you was going to hate me, you was going to hate me regardless of whether or not I did that. So, come on, tribe. Come on, community. The people who love me or rock with me, come on, continue to rock with me. But I'm not going to do that in terms of, really resting on that moment. I got to leave that where it was. And I believe they're actually streaming the old shows on Paramount Plus. So if you want to watch it, you can watch it, come up to your own conclusions. However, from what I've seen on, now that I'm reacclimating myself to the challenge world, that sister kicks ass in the challenges a lot of times, and she's feisty, she stirred up, when the pot needs to get stirred up. But hey, y'all fans, y'all tend to like stuff like that. So for the folks that's into that, I guess it's like furries, I'm not really into that, but I'm not gonna keep you from your joy. If you throw on, a fox hat and bark like a dog, to get your rocks off. So, I again, I never answer the question. I will continue to dance around it, to try not to give it life. She a grown woman. I'm a grown woman now. We were kids back then, man. Like we were kids. We were just kind of smelling our underarms for the first time for real, as women. So I gotta leave that where that is for now. But yeah, I wish the best for her. And like I said, for me, I got love for all my cast members. Some of it runs and looks differently than it does the other ones. And yeah, I said what I said.
But if I'm playing devil's advocate here, say if on the next one, because without getting too far ahead of ourselves, I would go out on a limb and say it's possible that we could see her again, and probably you again too. Would we? How do you feel like that would go down if you two say end up on a future All Stars together?
We'll just have to see. Come on, y'all. Y'all gotta tweak this stuff up. Y'all gotta watch the shows. Y'all gotta, you know what I mean? It's not really up to me. It's up to the fans. If it's something that y'all want to see, if it's something that y'all think has value and brings value to your space of relaxation, hey, say the word. Again, like I said, I live in the moment. It's interesting, and bringing it full circle to All Stars 2. I didn't go in knowing a whole lot about anybody there. Full stop. Like there are maybe 2 people that I had previous, or maybe 3 people that I had like previous interactions with. But to say that like, this person was at the birth of my kids or sent me a card when I had my kids, or if I even know they have any, I haven't been to your weddings, I haven't babysat, your little brothers and sisters. Those types of experiences, I didn't have that with anybody going into All Stars 2. So, I lived my life. I lived to the fullest. I left nothing on the beach. I had left nothing on the iceberg. I left nothing in the trees. I left nothing. I left nothing. I took my moments. I'll tell you this though. TJ Lavin, OMG. You talk about, when you're an athlete, your coach gets into your ear, right? And for some athletes, they'll take, the meat of what the coach says and, run with it. But for me, the voice of the coach is so important. And TJ became a voice like that in my ear unexpectedly. I had never met TJ before. So I look forward to you guys again taking a gander at the show, pulling up your couch seat or your spinning machine if you're into that, and taking a moment out to watch that moment happen.
Yeah, and I'm sure you hopping on to this new challenge after that big layoff of yours had to be almost like a culture shock for you in a sense, because I was going back yesterday and watching Battle of the Sexes 1, and one of the challenges that you guys were doing, and you probably know what I'm talking about because you were like the head honcho. Everyone was like looking for what you were doing with your strategy. You guys were, I think, playing laser tag on one of the challenges on Sexes 1. So I'm looking at that and I'm comparing it to, let's just throw an example, like All Stars 1, they were jumping back and forth from like moving semi trucks, right, to retrieve balls. Like the contrast between those two types of events, is quite big of a margin. Like, how did you feel about the change in obviously the challenges now as opposed to when you were first doing them?
Man, I remember watching, I did watch, like I said, I've watched a few podcasts of yours before doing this one, because I just wanted to get a feel for your voice, as well as just, okay, let me get to know what some of the other people's reflections are. And one that I really resonated with, again, if you guys haven't watched Ruthie's Mike Lewis podcast, please watch Ruthie's, because I'll tell you this, 2 people that I resonated with when I watched their podcast were Ruthie and Kendall. Just hands down, just so many little gems that they dropped during those podcasts. Just really, again, spoke to my why, and also spoke to me. And one of the things that Ruthie said was, she looked up and she's like, wow, I get to do that. And that's how I felt with this. Again, I have 4 kids. I live in DC, just came out of a super traumatic set of circumstances over a course of years, to literally go from my circumstance to flying to some undisclosed location somewhere in the world. You don't know if it's going to be cold. You don't know if it's going to be hot. You don't know if it's going to be windy or anything else. And they say, you get the chance to win $500,000 and do this cool stuff. I mean, for me, other than it, again, not being a scam or something else weird, I'm like, let's go. I mean, when will I get this chance again? I mean, again, I was born in the 70s. I'm not going to disclose my full age. You can find it on the internet. It's just right there. If you Google my name, my birthday's right there. Good goodness. But, but when will someone make that phone call a second time? Especially, given the trajectory of, where, I was personally, I said, let's go. Let's go as far as we can. And that's what it was. So I was excited. I was excited to see the evolution and the step up. I will say this. My kids and I watched Latarian and Abe's pole wrestle. And my son looked at me and he said, Mom, whatever you do, don't pole wrestle Latarian. I cracked up. I was like, bro, nah, that's not gonna happen. I don't think they're gonna put me and Latarian in the ring, man. I can't fake it. If that were to happen, I already had in my mind. If that were to happen, I would just say, hey, bro, you know what? It's been a good game. I like my ribs. I'm good. So, but yeah, I know that's something too. And I want to preface this too. I guess I can't preface it now, but I'll suffix it with, Latarian really didn't, that's not his way. He's like he's a very caring individual. He thinks about things very deeply. He cares for human beings deeply. He's also a athlete. He's a Division I athlete. He's someone that understands what it means to have a mission or a goal and a task, and to deliver. You know what I mean? Just to deliver on the end game by any means necessary. So I get that grit, but I don't think in any way, and after even talking to him, in no way did he intend for it to escalate to what it did escalate. But yeah, my son watching those other shows, seeing Challenge Then versus Challenge Now, my son was like, look, Mom, go do it, but just don't pole wrestle Latarian. So, I was excited for it. Still am excited for it,
Who would you like to pole wrestle, say, if given the opportunity?
Y'all gonna make me tell all my business on the Mike Lewis podcast. Y'all just gonna have to watch the season and find out. It'll be apparent by the end of the season, but y'all have to watch the season and y'all that'll answer that question.
Fair enough. Maybe we could have a different chat in the future, somewhere down the line. So we briefly touched upon it earlier, and I'm surprised it took us this far without fully diving into it, about your obviously sexist to post-elimination speech about the uniform. Was that some type of like spiritual way of thinking, with like manifesting maybe a victory or something around those lines? Is that legitimately how you felt, or was it more or less just like something that just like came out of left field in the sense of it just kind of came out when you said it?
What action that's super different than what other people do doesn't come out of left field, right? We talk about people being right-brained and left-brained. Left brain is where all the creativity is, left-brained folks, and right brain is more logical. I might have them flipped up. Hey, like I said, I said what I said. It might be wrong. Fact check me, correct me. But, this idea that you can visualize what you want and get what you want, for me, is real. even if what you receive from that isn't what you expect. I didn't want to say to myself, like, again, if the whole idea of I'm want to do something that physically represents what I want tomorrow. I want to sleep in my uniform. I want to light a candle. I want to put a poster of a Maserati on the wall. You know, people do all sorts of things to bring into the physical realm, what they want, you know, in the future realm, right? So, you know, people post a post of a beautiful place to live and say, this will be my house one day. That was that for me. It was to physically embody and visualize winning at the time. What I didn't get at that day was a win, but what I definitely got was the next 15 years of every time people came up to me saying some iteration of, I slept in my uniform last night because I wanted to win today. And there were certain times when people would say that I really needed to hear it. I really needed to be reminded that, you know, your physical environment matches your mental environment. So maybe go home and, you know, organize your papers or your boxes. Yeah, you can, you know, what do you want to win today? You want to win the Mike Lewis podcast. So yeah, maybe go get your hair done and get a little bit of war paint on. I like to call makeup war paint. But, you know, doll up a little bit to a look that represents not only who you are, but brings out a part of who you are that you sometimes keep hidden. So yeah, sleeping in our uniforms. You know, how do we do that in our everyday lives? You know, what does that look like for folks? For some folks, it looks like before they go to bed, they, you know, brush their teeth and wash their face, because they know the next day that's preparing them to be in the right mindset. I'm still working through what that looks like for me at, you know, this stage in my life. You know, what does sleeping in my uniform look like? Does it really take me putting the clothes on the night before, or does it really mean something else, something a little bit more figurative than literal? You know, in what ways do you prepare for your success for the next day? And that's why I'm working with, you know, the VIPlife.net. The team is Switch On, Coach Arlo Henderson and Roddy Ferguson, to unpack that and unravel that walk. And also sticking close to my girl, Brandy Forte. Again, author, writer of Stronger. Please grab her books if you're at all interested. She has 2 books, Free and Stronger. And you talk about, you know, resilient women and our stories. I am one of so many. I think fans resonated with me because I represent, they see themselves in me. They see their walk, they see their journey, they see their struggle. Ruthie and I were in Laramie, Wyoming, around the time that Matthew Shepard was murdered. And we had an opportunity to speak with the community of Laramie, like it literally had just happened. And we were speaking with the community about diversity and how you can, you know, connect with people who are different from you and open up these lines of communication. And I bring that up because, you know, you talk about sometimes you need to have all stories told. You can't say that this is the perfect person. You know, when Matthew Shepard woke up that morning, he didn't know that his mark in history would be made from this immense and tremendous wrong that would be done to him. He didn't know that. His family didn't know that. He was Matthew, you know, who loved who he loved and lived how he lived. I'll give another example. There's an amazing woman. She's a mom. Her name is Lynn Ulbrich. Her son, Ross Ulbrich, has been in prison for many years. For those that follow cryptocurrency and just the evolution of that, he was the creator of a site called Silk Road. I mean, he created this site when he was in his early 20s. And he creates this site. And of course, you know, down the line, there's some sundry activities that happen on the site. You know, he's a coder, he's a developer, but because of these sundry activities, you know, he winds up paying the ultimate price of his freedom and becomes, in many respects, his circumstance becomes becomes the platform for talking about how do we fairly regulate being a technology innovator when it intersects with bad actors and people that want to do, terrible things on the internet. Again, when Lynn had her son and she put him in the good schools and she supported him in being this, this super coder, she had no idea that this would be a part of her journey. She now advocates for Ross, and also there being leniency when, a creator creates something that is different than anything that exists. And then someone takes that technology and is a bad actor with it. That being said, we put ourselves in these circumstances and we begin to become stories. We become storytellers. People watched my episode and they saw me and my mom. How many women out there grew up with just their mom and they're riding through life and then she's taken from them and then they have to, put themselves back together again after being undone for something like that. So that's just it. I mean, I'm here for it. I hid from it for a long time, but thank you, fans. Thank you, my friends. Thank y'all for continuing to knock at the door, because having this opportunity to go on a challenge reminded me that I'm not alone in all of this, and I'm just very grateful, and I have a lot of gratitude because of it.
Yeah, I'm thankful that you were able to share those stories. Just to spend a little bit more time on that situation, I thought the whole sequence after that was like it was funny because I think you put your cardboard cutout of yourself on Anissa's bed.
Now that my daughter looked at me like, "Mom, really?" And I just told her, I was like, I was upset. I was in my feelings. She hurt my feelings. She's supposed to be my friend. And in that moment, now mind you see how I just changed up, right? I went from this positive, inspiring person to being like, Mama. Well, guess what? So many of us are more than one thing. I am definitely more than one thing. That's a little bit, it's funny. There's a line that I consider this person a friend, but this person said there's two Ayannas. There's Ayanna and there's Tayana. Well, y'all just saw a little bit of Tayana that day. Like, y'all saw me. I had my feelings hurt. I felt betrayed in that moment. And I wanted her to know and remember me. Like, yeah, she put herself on my bed when I was gone, when I was back at the hotel or on the airplane or wherever else I was going off to. Definitely the most. We didn't have that phrase back then, doing the most, but yeah, I was doing the most. I was hurt. I really was. She hurt my feelings that day. I got over it very quickly, but on that day, no, until the adrenaline kind of came down a little bit. Like, I wasn't going to be breaking windows. Like, that's never been my bag. Like, I'm not a destroyer per se. I'm not going to break the windows. I'm not going to do that. But if I can unleash petty, petty Ayanna a little bit, I'm gonna be a little petty. And I think that was me being petty. And I did what I did.
How do you feel about the way Anissa plays the game?
Certain things, I think it's entertaining. I think that people watch it, for anybody that acts like at this point, for anybody that acts like they don't know what's coming as it pertains to that reputation, I think they would be either like me, just didn't watch the show and don't know, or they're being super naive. It's gotten her very far in the game. So do you knock somebody for taking the road less traveled in their strategy? I think it could be debated either way. I just know for me, it takes a lot of energy to do that kind of thing, to create these spaces of safety and then completely put a grenade in those spaces and blow them up. That takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of and you collect a lot of luggage doing that. You know, if you ever blown anything up, I've only blown something up once, and it was in a science class. But when we blew, well, that's not all the way true. I made something on the stove once. I didn't really want to put that out there, but I may as well. And it blew up all over the place. But if you've ever made something that's blown up or blown up something, you know, those pieces go everywhere. They go on you. They go on others that are around you. They're just all over the place. And when you have to pick up all those pieces and you put them in bags, those bags can be heavy to carry around, right? And folks normally don't forget when you've blown something up around them. For some folk, they see the world as there are a billion people out here. I can blow up one person every day of my life, and it's still, a couple more billion I've never even met yet. I can always reinvent myself. That's how they walk. No judgment towards Anissa. If I saw her tomorrow, I'd dap her up. I'd be careful if I was on a challenge. Like, I may not get too close to her, so I won't have my feelings hurt or be surprised if it goes down in a foul way. I learned some things on All Stars 2. I came in very naive about a lot of stuff, and I would now take that information if I were to be in that position again for a subsequent show. I just probably wouldn't be naive for that reputation and operate accordingly within the construct of the challenge. Outside of the challenge, she's one of my cousins that if she came to the door, I'm opening it up. She gonna eat at my table, and she gonna say some funny stuff. The girl can sing her ass off. I don't know if y'all have ever heard her sing, but Anissa really got pipes, and she has a lot of vocal control, all that. So, hopefully she would bless my table with a song. And she's beautiful. She's a beautiful woman in that regard, in her creativity. So that's all I got on it. I try not to create too many bags to carry around in my life at this stage, because I just did a whole lot of work to let bags go. A lot of work. And that's literal and figuratively, to let bags go. So I try not to collect them at this stage.
Do you have any more potential stories? Maybe did you get any opportunities from any of your shows, to go on any appearances, maybe speaking engagements, or were bar appearances a thing back when you were on the shows, or do those not exist yet?
So for the real world had bar appearances and lots of club stuff. Road Rules and some of the real worlders would come on with us too. There were a lot of speaking engagements at different colleges and whatnot. And for a while I did those, but also the airing of the shows coincided with my mom passing away. So, I really retreated from a lot of that in the short term, just because, she was my foundation. I went back to school. I did graduate from Howard University. So, I did really dive really deep into my program. My program was theater arts. So I had a chance to be in class with Chadwick Boseman, the late Chadwick Boseman. I had a chance to work with many very, very talented folks who professionally are actors. That wasn't my major when I was at Howard. I was a theater administration major. I had dreams of being a producer and green lighting shows. And I also took a lot of tech production classes. So I wanted to make little figurines for the Dark Crystal remake. That's a whole nother side of me I don't really talk about publicly. But, I love fantasy Dark Crystal. I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole, Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole because it might get weird. But, there's this other side that's very crafty to my way of being. And that's what I envisioned for myself. So I really got deep during those years right after the shows into independent works, independent projects. So I funded 2 films actually, and went on and literally was on location and on set for those 2 independent films. One really blew up and has become iconic within, the punk community, specifically the Afro punk community. that was amazing. I had partnered with the director of that film. At the time, he had already shot the entire film, and he was just making some tweaks and, editing some things together. And we were just literally two broke kids in New York trying to figure out how to get the word out about, this film. That experience was transformative because I learned a lot about a community that I didn't know a lot about at the time. At the same time, it took me to a lot of different places to help with the promotion and the screening of the film. Another film that I worked at the time was called Like Water, Jean on Canoe. And the creator of that film, when we really get into what you were talking about before, manifesting into the physical realm, which you feel spiritually, I connected with a sister named Vanessa Hill, who now is the executive director of a project called Project Nana, after her grandmother, where they help women who are overcoming, health issues, and they really promote health awareness in communities. But at any rate, she had envisioned telling a female story from the perspective of her grandmother and those in her family that had come from the Bahamas and were wrestling with this duality of being from more than one place. Extraordinary and exquisite. That film was shot by Bradford Young, who went on to shoot Selma and other big things. But at that time, we were all kids. We were like in our early 20s, just trying to make things work. The money that I got at that time from doing that, it came from my mom passing. I felt like when my mom passed and I got a little bit of money, I felt like it was blood money. I didn't want that money. I wanted my mom back. So I threw every last penny and dime into whatever I thought had value. I think I funded one of my girlfriend's like prepaid legal excursions. At the time I was attending a church, so I was tithing a lot. I gave every last penny of that. Like, it all went into the wind because, like I said, a lot of my progression during that time really had to do with me trying to find a sense of place. And so that's, when we talk about opportunities, there were opportunities, but many of them were more subtle than what one would normally expect. Like, I didn't go on other reality shows, and, I didn't have a product that I was selling, if that makes any sense. However, in the creative community, I definitely used it as leverage at times to get into certain spaces and to have a voice. And so that's what I did at the time. Sometimes being Ayanna on Road Rules opened the door, but what kept me in the door was being, Shanaza Oshram, who it's another name that I have that was given to me, just being my true authentic self and operating within that world. So yeah, I can't tell you how many protests I've been to over the years, like I'm in Washington, D.C. So, we protested everything from, we even went to the Million Puppet March. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. If you Google it, it'll come up. But one of the first protests I took my little bitty babies to, my daughter was she was maybe like 5 and my son was like 3. And we went to the Million Puppet March. And Mitt Romney was trying to get the funding taken away from PBS. Like, who does that? But, when you're trying to defund public television, it's like, what in the world did Jim Henson do to you? But, yeah, it was a big issue on the Hill at the time, defunding public television and public radio. So we were down there protesting, we were dressed as puppets, it was, it was a lot. So I spent a lot of time, protesting, just really being more of a member of the community versus, being on the spotlight of it, if that makes any sense. Raging against the machine, raging against people's ideas of what kids could do. Like I said, I taught for a number of years in DC public schools, as well as, other independent spaces. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's maybe not as sexy as what one would think would happen if you get access to a multinational television show for the time that I had access to it. However, I think things come full circle. Anybody that's still on the podcast watching this at this point, I connect with you in some way. I connect with a part of who you are. I connect with a part of your story. You see a part of you in me being represented on television. So that being said, I'm here. I'm here for it. I'm here for that, and to do that work. And then hopefully, bring more awareness to amazing programs that, help people, such as the Mary Center, Washington, D.C., LIFT, which is actually a national organization, but I'm specifically speaking on LIFT DC. Organizations like City Kids, oh my, City Kids takes kids out of urban environments and takes them to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to experience horseback riding and kayaking and character ed and peace building and conflict resolution and all kinds of cool stuff. College Bound, another organization that handholds students from middle school through college, and ensures that they have someone on their team that helps them through that academic journey. In so many ways, organizations like the ones that I've mentioned, you talk about what colors and flavors your life. This has been my world, to show up when my friends that are doing this kind of work need someone to show up, to stuff the envelopes, to make the phone calls, to do the phone trees. I'm in Washington, D.C. We are a city that is diverse and dealing with some high challenges. One of my neighbors was killed, I think it's now a month ago. He had just gotten out from behind the wall. And for those that don't know what that means, when you go to jail, sometimes that's called being behind the wall. If you're in prison, it's called being behind the wall. So when he came back, returning citizen from behind the wall, he literally got killed the day that he got out. I've known Delonte since he was 11 years old. To see his name flash across the television screen, it's different. It doesn't become just one more name when it's somebody that that you've seen grow up, that you slid a couple dollars to when they needed to, they helped you carry some groceries up when you couldn't because you was pregnant and you couldn't even get your own groceries up your stairs. And it's the person who did that. And the person that would give you that, you looking good, ma, and you might not feel like you look good, and brightens your day and textures your life. And then when they're so violently taken away like that quick, it becomes a part of that city story. I am in DC. I am DC. It's the one place I've lived the most years in my life, in one place. When I came to Howard, in 1997, DC became a home. This is where I live. And this is where I've been since then. So I consider myself, this is where I'm rooted. I don't consider myself quite native yet, because DC native means you was born and bred in Washington, D.C. But I definitely consider myself rooted in the city and committed to the city being the best city that it can be for all of us that live there. I think that story resonates with people around the country. Whether you're in St. Louis, whether you're in Texas, whether you're in Chicago, Los Angeles, whether you're in Longa Township, whether you over wherever you're at in your space, sense of place is what matters most. Now, not, folks say, oh, money is everything, or access is everything. But when it boils down to it, what do you do with money? You secure your sense of place. What do you do with your access? You secure your sense of place. People get a little bit of money. What's the first thing they do? They go buy a house. Why? Because sense of place. They want to have some place that, wraps them up in a hug and tells them it's going to be okay when they walk through the door, So that's all I got, Mike Lewis. I mean, I'm here for any other questions, but I'm excited for this next chapter in the journey. Let's go. Like I said, All Stars 2, man. I think that y'all have a good time with us. It's an interesting group of people. And when I say interesting, I don't even use that word lightly. You got Leah, you got, oh gosh, you talk mentions, you got, of course, Tina. Oh, of course, Tina. I'm not going to reveal anything because y'all don't know whether I rock with her or I don't. So I'm not going to say anything on this podcast just yet. Maybe that's for Mike Lewis podcast part 2. But, Tina, she's a big personality. Y'all can get my opinion on that later. You got Nehemiah. He's been on how many challenges? He's had how many shots at the big bag? Come on now, you got to see if he goes all the way on this one. So we got so many levels and layers of individuals all converging, all coming together. You don't want to miss it. It's good TV.
Yeah, I could attest to that. I mean, I've gotten the fortunate opportunity to, I think, speak with probably about 75% of the people that are going to be on this. So that's, definitely a plus for me. But I think that's a good place to close it. I definitely appreciate you being very out and open with all your stories, and definitely got in depth. And I think that the people are going to really enjoy this once this is out and up. And thank you for your time again. And I look forward to it. Definitely in the future, we should definitely get a part 2 going once the show premieres and is out and rolling.
For sure. Anytime, Mike. And thank you for letting me break my cherry on your podcast. Cause you're the first. You number one. You're the first. Don't nobody get a chance to be the first twice. So you're the first person that I'm talking to, walking down memory lane with. So just thank you for your time and the opportunity to do it.
For sure. And I thank you as well. And I'll let you know when it's out.
All right, for sure. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.